And you're live.
It's 5:05. A good Thursday morning to you. Welcome into the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We start with breaking news this morning on one of the many legal challenges that we have been tracking over the last couple of weeks here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. The North Carolina Court of Appeals has blocked a lower court ruling favoring Governor Josh Stein in his legal battle with state legislative leaders and state auditor Dave Bolick over election board and authority over the North Carolina State Board of Elections. The governor says that the decision, quote, poses a threat to our democracy and the rule of law, noting that the only plausible explanation for the appeals court action is trying to help overturn the results of last fall's disputed state Supreme Court election, according to a post on X from Governor Josh Stein yesterday afternoon. The order did come out yesterday from a unanimous, unnamed three-judge panel within the North Carolina Appeals Court, and it could pave the way for Dave Bolick to make new appointments to the State Board of Election as early as today. Obviously, this happening late yesterday, still a lot of moving parts, but it could happen as soon as today. State law also calls for Bolick to take over administration of the North Carolina State Board of Election. A little follow-up and background as to how we got here. Stein is challenging a law that shifts the state election administration under Dave Bolick's office. Stein is a Democrat. Bolick and legislative leaders in Raleigh, they are Republicans. The appeals court issued an order called a writ of supersedes. We've mentioned that over the last few weeks as well, which is blocking a three-judge panel's April the 23rd decision in the ongoing legal dispute. The panel split 2-1 in that ruling, and the election administration changes spelled out in Senate Bill 382, which they claimed violated the North Carolina state constitution. The trial court panel ruled that the election board appointments should stay with Governor Josh Stein and in control with the Democrats. That decision, according to the order, quote, is hereby stayed pending deposition of the defendant's appeal or until further order from this court. Governor Josh Stein responding within minutes of the decision on X, he referenced Republican State Supreme Court candidate Jefferson Griffin's ongoing efforts to challenge the results of the 2024 election against appointed incumbent Justice Allison Riggs, the Democrat candidate, with Stein also saying, quote, Jefferson Griffin lost. When you lose, you work harder the next time to win. You do not try to challenge the rules after the election is over. Today's Court of Appeals decision about the Board of Election poses a threat to our democracy and the rule of law. The Supreme Court should not allow it to stand. He continued by saying, quote, I feel that this decision is the latest step in a partisan effort to steal a seat on the Supreme Court. No emergency exists that can justify the Court of Appeals' decision to interject itself at this point. The only plausible explanation is to permit the Republican state auditor to appoint a new state board of elections that will try to overturn the results of the Supreme Court race. Some very strong words there from Governor Josh Stein. The leader of the North Carolina Senate in Phil Berger responded to this last night by saying, quote, the Court of Appeals rightly affirmed what we all know. The governor is not the solely elected executive officer in North Carolina government. Despite that, Governor Stein is desperately grasping to keep a partisan stronghold on the State Board of Elections instead of working to make common sense changes to improve election administration. North Carolinians deserve to have a board of elections that works for them. That's why the General Assembly reformed the State Board of Elections last year to be under the authority of the State Auditor's Office, which is well equipped to refocus the board's mission and to restore trust in our elections. With that, Stein's lawyers filed paperwork with the state Supreme Court yesterday afternoon, just after this decision, to place a temporary stay on the appeals court order, We are not sure exactly how they will respond to that, this being the North Carolina Supreme Court. We'll continue to track the details and have more for you coming up as the show rolls on this morning. It's now, you can read additional details by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:09, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Here in North Carolina is set to have a brand new commissioner. To get some details on that this morning, Teresa Opeka, carolinajournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Teresa, over the last couple of years, the DMV has been marred in plenty of controversy, months-long waits at DMV offices, a current audit going on by State Auditor Dave Bullock. The new commissioner, I think many folks would argue, is stepping into a little bit of a mess. What's the latest that you're tracking this morning?
Yes, good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me. He certainly is. So former state rep Paul Tine has been chosen to serve as the new DMV commissioner here in North Carolina. And North Carolina DOT made that announcement yesterday in a press release. His first day is May 6th. And, there's been quite a bit of controversy the last few years where you've got people, it's impossible to make an appointment online, or people are trying their luck to go to stand in line at one of the DMV offices across the state. Long lines. I think I even seen something as people are starting as early as 2 a.m. and they're still not getting in. So yeah, it's been a huge, huge problem. And, you get a little more on, Paul Tine, he's switched parties. Remember, we were talking about that before.
Yeah, Representative Tine, previously in the North Carolina General Assembly, was elected as a Democrat, switched his party affiliation to unaffiliated in 2015. Teresa, is this an appointed position by the governor? How did this position become vacancy? There's a little bit of backstory on that you've got.
Sure. So this is people had to apply online at the North Carolina jobs portal, and they selected among those candidates. And Joey Hopkins, who is appointed by the governor, or was appointed by the governor, made the final decision on Mr. Tine to appoint him. And this all came, of course, from Wayne Goodwin stepping down. He made the announcement in February he would not seek to renew his term. And we can go into more about that in a moment. But yeah, it's basically appointed somewhat, but you had to apply for the position.
Well, let's talk about Chris Goodwin and some of the work that went on within DMV. Teresa, this is not a new issue, as you mentioned, with people having to show up at 2 o'clock in the morning to get in line to get a real ID. This has been a systemic problem for the Division of Motor Vehicle across the state of North Carolina. As I mentioned in the open, State Auditor Dave Bullock has announced that he's going in there and his auditors are crawling up the ceiling trying to unpack everything that they can about DMV. There's still a lot of ongoing problems there.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Wayne Goodwin, he started in 2022, not that long ago, and there's been chaos and much frustration ever since. With I'm not saying it didn't start before his tenure, but it certainly hasn't gotten any better. Even the North Carolina House Oversight Committee grilled him back in February, asking him, they've gotten so many phone calls from people and emails and, just discussing like, well, why is it so terrible? And basically Goodwin pointed to, well, there's so many people moving into North Carolina, we need more staff. We just can't handle it all. Things of that nature. And he made the comment at that hearing that when he finally made the decision to step down, he just figured it was time. He had the best sleep of his life that night, knowing he made that decision. I guess I would understand why, because everything was a big mess. I mean, I moved here in 2020 and I did get lucky. I got the real ID and I had to wait a few months, but it was nothing like it is now. So many people are complaining across the state. It's not an isolated incident. He said, well, things have improved. They got kiosks in some of the grocery stores and opened a few new offices or extended hours, but it hasn't made a dent in all the trouble that people have had trying to get a license. And now with Real ID coming, the deadline is May 7th, that's also doubling the frustration and chaos you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, the Real ID, which was, I think, originally slated to go into effect a couple of years ago, Teresa, and it has been pushed back multiple times by the federal government because so many states have had issues rolling this out. As it stands, as we chat this morning, it appears that that May the 7th deadline is going to stay in place, meaning individuals that have not had the opportunity to get an appointment at DMV and get upgraded to that real ID, for them to fly domestically, they're going to need a passport or they're not going to be able to get through TSA.
That's right. That's right. It's going to be such a hassle, especially if you are trying to fly. Maybe if you're not flying anywhere, but you're trying to also maybe to get into a government building, they're also requiring real IDs. Tine had some words of encouragement and also in the press release about the real IDs. He said, unless you have, a trip coming up, you don't have to rush to the DMV to get the real ID. But if you do need to try to do that because, as you said, that you're going to be in for a long trouble or a long way to the airport trying to get on a plane. So you can also check out ncrealid.gov for more information on that. But yeah, it is a mess. There's no other way to describe it.
Teresa, you follow state government very closely, and for the most part, the vast majority of people do not interface with the government all that often, especially state government. The DMV is maybe some of the only interactions that people have with state government outside of maybe the tax office and agencies like that. This is not a good look for state government when folks are having to deal with this and drive 4.5 hours to get to a DMV office to get a new ID. It's not a good look for the state of North Carolina.
No, it's not. It's not. Other places, you hear other states, people like, oh, I hate going to the DMV or whatever, and might be a little bit of frustration with it, but nowhere near what it is here in North Carolina. And it's not a good look on top of the trouble we've had with, say, NCOR. Going to bring that up, and like I said, surprised it's not a bigger scandal across the U.S. where you've got a state agency mismanaging over $3 million of funding that was supposed to go for families who still need houses that were affected by Hurricanes Matthew and Florence. And we've had multiple hearings on that for the last few years. There's just one thing after the other. So it's definitely not a good look for the state.
We'll obviously continue to track progress within DMV. We'll also be keeping an eye and waiting for State Auditor Dave Bolick's full audit with some recommendations for the Division of Motor Vehicle as well. Teresa, for folks that want to maybe read some more quotes from the incoming commissioner, where can they do that this morning?
They can head on over to carolinajournal.com.
Teresa Opeka joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:17, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get a look at the roadways on your Thursday morning. A look at traffic with the great Boomer Von Cannon.
All right, thank you, Nick.
Get ready, Charlotte. The Mech Mile presented by Albemarle is back at the American Legion Memorial Stadium coming up in just a few days on May the 10th. Whether you walk, run, or jog, there's a spot just for you. All ages, all speeds, everyone is welcome. And hey, don't forget, kids 13 and under run for free when they register. Sign up this morning at mechmile.com and score your custom medal and t-shirt. That's mechmile.com. It's the Mecklenburg Mile presented by Albemarle. It's back at the American Legion Memorial Stadium coming up on May the 10th. It's now 5:23. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Looking at some other legal scenarios this morning, the federal judge overseeing the election dispute over a seat on North Carolina's Supreme Court is giving both parties, or really all parties in this case, 2 more days to submit additional legal arguments. He indicated plans to issue a final ruling in the case after all briefs and arguments are filed. U.S. Chief District Judge Richard Myers issued an order yesterday morning spelling out his plans for resolving the case. He wrote, quote, "This court has reviewed the parties' brief and identified no issues of material fact. Given the unique circumstances and procedural posture of the consolidated action, the court intends to treat parties' briefs as cross motions for summary judgment and enter summary judgment for one or more parties. A summary judgment would amount to a final decision without a trial." Myers added, accordingly, on or before May the 2nd of 2025, all parties shall provide notice to the court of any material facts that they believe remain genuinely disputed. Number 2, whether they have any objections to the court treating their briefing as a cross motion for summary judgment. And 3, whether they require more time to come forward with all of their evidence or facts. He continued by saying the courts want to rule promptly in this manner, but do not wish to deprive any party of the opportunity to put forward their best case. Originally, Myers had set a Monday as a deadline for briefings in the dispute that pits Republican candidate Jefferson Griffin against the North Carolina State Board of Elections and Democrat Allison Riggs, as well as the North Carolina Democrat Party and left-of-center activist groups that are all taking part in the lawsuit. However, due to some of the lack of material fact, according to the judge, he has now pushed that deadline, and everybody has until tomorrow to submit any additional information, meaning we will not likely be getting a decision this week from a U.S. Chief District Judge Richard Myers. This is another ongoing legal battle we continue to follow. We'll keep an eye on it right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour and on our website, carolinajournal.com. Turning our attention to the North Carolina General Assembly this morning, a bill in the North Carolina Senate would give and allow authorized private school personnel to have concealed carry, those that have concealed carry permits, to carry a firearm on school grounds. Senate Bill 280 is named the Private School Security Act and was voted through the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday morning. Supporters say that the bill aims to address growing concerns about safety in private and religious schools across the state. State Senator Steve Jarvis, the Republican from Davidson County, said, quote, "This bill simply strengthens the safety in North Carolina's private schools while respecting the unique needs of our communities." Under the legislation, employees or volunteers with concealed carry permits may carry firearms, but only with explicit authorization from the private school or the administration director of the said school. Stringent requirements include mandatory annual training that exceeds current concealed carry standards, which is not required, focused on safety and appropriate use of firearms. Schools would also need to adopt a clear written procedure that outlines concealed carry policies and share those guidelines with parents every year. The bill also addresses facilities that serve as both private schools and places of worship, allowing individuals to carry concealed weapons during events such as funerals or wedding services. Senator Jarvis noting this legislation empowers private school leaders to make decisions that reflect their community's values. It carefully balances safety with individual rights when entrusting robust oversight. The push for Senate Bill 280 comes in the wake of an increased threat against Christian and private schools, particularly after the tragic Nashville school shooting that took place in March of 2023, where 6 individuals, including 3 children, were killed. During the committee meeting, a number of private education and religious leaders voiced their support for Senate Bill 280. Reverend Mark Creech, head of the government relations and advocacy group Return America, emphasized the vulnerability of private and Christian schools. He told senators, quote, "Our children are vulnerable. Many private schools lack both the means and legal authority to act. God forbid the day comes when a deranged individual targets a campus with violent intent. This legislation gives these schools the freedom to protect their students, reducing the likelihood of becoming a soft target," end quote there from Reverend Creech. Ron Beatty, the founder of Return America and a pastor for a Winston-Salem school, echoed similar concerns, noting, "Every day we're horrified and worried because we have no legal recourse to protect our staff and or our students. If a shooter comes onto our property, we're defenseless. This bill would allow us to ensure that the safety of our precious staff and students." Dr. Joe Hass, who represents the North Carolina Christian School Association, highlighted the disparity between public and private school security. He told lawmakers, "Public schools often have resource officers, but private schools do not. This bill provides an opportunity for private schools to take necessary steps to protect their students." Senate Bill 280 was also met with some criticism, however, from Democrat lawmakers and anti-gun advocacy groups during the committee meeting. Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch, the Democrat out of Wake County, expressed concerns regarding background checks, suggesting that the bill should address potential loopholes. Specifically, Batch included a proposal which would have changed a provision to check the responsible individual list, which is a private database maintained by Child Protective Services. The list identifies individuals who have been sustained for several child abuse or neglect scenarios, but who may have not had criminal convictions. Batch noted, quote, "A person that has dealt with this severely neglecting or abusing a child should not be allowed to carry a concealed weapon on campus with children. I would support this bill with an amendment to address this concern." Advocacy groups like Moms Demand Action have also voiced concerns about adding firearms to the school environment. According to Amanda Lerman, a volunteer with the organization and a substitute teacher, she told lawmakers in the North Carolina Senate, "Adding more guns creates an undue burden on teachers and increases the likelihood of casualties during incidents of violence. There is no evidence that arming school staff improves safety." This has been a major debate over the last couple of years in the North Carolina General Assembly. As it stands this morning, Senate Bill 280 would allow the various individuals that go through a process to carry concealed on a private school or religious school grounds. The bill, as it stands right now, is currently in the operations of the Senate committee, the Rules Committee, that was referred over there yesterday. We'll track its progress and let you know as soon as it's heading to the floor for a vote right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:31. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time to get another look at the roadways this morning with Look at Traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. In North And you're live.
It's 5:37. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Recapping our breaking news this morning out of the North Carolina Court of Appeals. In an order yesterday afternoon, they have temporarily blocked a lower court ruling that favored Governor Josh Stein in a legal battle over who controls the State Board of Elections. The stay, which was issued by a unanimous three-judge panel, allows Republican State Auditor Dave Bolick to proceed with appointing a new election board, a new member of the election board, and overseeing election administration. Power that Stein and his legal team argues is unconstitutional under Senate Bill 382. Stein, who, as we've noted, is a Democrat, claims that the decision is a partisan attempt to influence the outcome of the disputed Supreme Court race. Republican leaders, including Senate Leader Phil Berger, defended the appeals decision as a necessary check on the governor's power. Stein has appealed to the North Carolina Supreme Court to halt the ruling. They obviously have not responded to this. This all happening pretty quickly late yesterday afternoon. We'll continue to track the details, and we could learn as soon as today from State Auditor Dave Bolick as to who he plans to appoint to that board. We'll keep an eye on it throughout the day and provide details tomorrow, coming up for you right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. In the North Carolina House of Representatives yesterday, the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Environment approved the Farmers Assistant Grant Program as well as the Ag Manufacturing Economic Development Bill. The Farmer Assistant Grant Program, House Bill 348, extends to 6 years the carry-forward period for deferred property taxes on present use value lands and allows the excise tax revenue from the year 4 through year 6 to fund local government programs for eligible farmers. County boards and city councils must establish these grant funds to support the sustainability and growth of agriculture, horticulture, or forest economies throughout the state. A maximum of 5 grants per farmer is capped at $10,000 or 10% of the fund's balance. The legislation would mandate that the North Carolina Department of Revenue create a standardized statewide application for grant eligibility. In addition, the bill would require city councils to obtain approval from county commissioners before annexing specific non-contingent present use value properties if the property zoning would strain public school capacities. The various provisions take effect between July and October of this year, with the tax carry forward changes starting July 1. The committee also approved the Agricultural Manufacturer Economic Development Bill. That's House Bill 552. That's bipartisan legislation sponsored by Representative Robert Reeves, the House Minority Leader from Chatham County, Jimmy Dixon, the Republican from Duplin County, as well as Representatives Howard Penny, Ray Jeffers, and others. This is a companion bill to Senate Bill 530 that came out of a joint legislative co-economic development caucus earlier this year. According to details in the legislation, this bill would establish an agriculture manufacturing investment grant within the One North Carolina Fund. It would not require any additional appropriation, so no additional burden on taxpayers, but it merely establishes a separate account within the existing fund focusing on developing North Carolina's agricultural manufacturing. Representative Pricey Harrison, the Democrat out of Guilford, addressed her concerns with the bill, saying, quote, "I just want to confirm that this does not include any manufacturing of potentially toxic pesticides or any sort of things like that. Is it strictly limited? I'm trying to figure out a way that it is defined if it's just included in buildings and infrastructure on farmland." Robert Reeves responded to that saying, "As I read it, it's agricultural manufacturing supporting rural areas. I don't know if it's limited to specific industries." From the Legislative Analysis Division at the North Carolina General Assembly, Chris Saunders further addressed some of those concerns, saying, quote, "Agricultural manufacturing isn't defined in here, but it does favor practices of precision agriculture, artificial intelligence-driven automation, biotechnology, and a combination of those various properties, prioritizing some of those projects." Senate Bill 552 was given a favorable report and has been referred to the House Standing Commerce and Economic Development Committee. You can read some additional details on both of those pieces of legislation by visiting our website this morning, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:42. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. There could soon be a new member on the North Carolina Utilities Commission. This all relates around a piece of legislation passed by the General Assembly last year that shifted some appointment powers to various boards and commissions throughout the state away from Governor Josh Stein into other Council of State positions. To get some details on that this morning, Teresa Opeka, Carolina Journal, joins us on the News Hour. Teresa, the Utilities Commission is a very influential group throughout the state. Everybody pays their water and electric bill every month. Those rates are set by the Utility Commission. What are you learning this morning about a new appointee?
Yep, that's right. Good morning, Nick. I spoke with State Treasurer Brad Briner on Tuesday, and he gave me a little bit of a heads up that he was choosing former North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality Secretary Donald Van der Vaart as his nominee for the Utilities Commission. As we said, Senate Bill 382 gave him the authority to choose one person for that commission. As you mentioned, it's an important commission because it sets those rates for not only like for electric, but also for your telephone service, gas, things of that nature, and also buses and ferry boats. It's a very, very big agency. I spoke to Treasurer Briner, said he was the best person for the job because they got hundreds of applicants after the word got out that he would get this chance to appoint somebody to the Utilities Commission back in December.
Van der Vaart has an interesting background. He has spent some time in some other state agencies as well. And going through your story this morning over at carolinajournal.com, Teresa, seems like he's pretty well equipped for this position based on some of his other experiences.
Right. So now he is currently the Chief Administrative Law Judge and Director of the Office of Administrative Hearings. He's also an engineer and attorney by trade. He's got a background in energy and utilities sector. And he also served on the EPA Scientific Advisory Board and North Carolina's Environmental Management Commission. He's got a really, really strong background on both sides. And that's what Treasurer Briner told me. And again, we had an exclusive interview with him that, he wanted someone with both sides of the coin where he could have the best of both worlds. And he got it with this candidate. So yeah, he does have a solid, strong background.
Now, of course, delving into politics with all of this, this is a 5-member board as it was previously, Teresa, as I understand it. 2 of the appointees came from the General Assembly. 3 others, including the chair, came from the governor's office. Now that's not going to be the case. You'll have 2 from the governor, 2 from the GA, and I guess this new appointed position. So presumably it's safe to say that maybe some of the political makeup on the Utilities Commission is set to change if this is to go through.
Right. Yeah, everything changed with the passage of SB 382 and it became law in December. So that is a definite possibility. Talking about this being political, 382 has so many different moving parts and also moving lawsuits. We also, going back a little bit, if Van der Vaart is appointed, he would replace a governor's appointee whose term would end on June 30th. So it was announced on Tuesday afternoon that today a 3-judge Superior Court panel has scheduled a hearing in Wake County Court to discuss Governor Josh Stein's request for a temporary restraining order on this change when it comes to the Utilities Commission. So it opens up a whole new can of worms.
Well, and our listeners are familiar with the discussion we've been having over the last couple of weeks as it relates to the North Carolina State Board of Elections. Also, some changes in Senate Bill 382 as it relates to that. That was supposed to kick off today, May 1. That did not happen due to a court order, and presumably Josh Stein is trying to get something similar for the Utilities Commission, as I understand it, Teresa.
Yeah, he is. Like, they filed that lawsuit and he wanted an injunction. And that's why they're having this 3-judge panel today, because Stein's attorneys argued that it's going to prevent the governor from fulfilling his duties and exercising the powers assigned to him in the Constitution. But Treasurer Briner disagreed with that. He said, he told me when we spoke that having read the Constitution and reading the opinion the court issued earlier last week in reference to the State Board of Elections. He said he couldn't see or understand where the decision came from. He says the governor has a different role than a treasurer or other members of council of state, and that's clear. But the opinion that was handed down seems to make, he says, quote, all of us subservient to the governor, but that's not the way the Constitution reads. That's Treasurer Briner's words. So yeah, it's very complicated issue. We're hoping that, or the state treasurer is hoping that his appointee does get appointed. They sent over the paperwork to the General Assembly, because they have to confirm it too. But it's all contingent on this court decision, as is for the state election board, which they made a decision, but again, the General Assembly is appealing that. So words of anything, stay tuned, because we just don't know where this is going to go.
Absolutely. Stay tuned for that. Teresa, any other additional comments? You did get that exclusive interview with Brad Briner. Any other comments that he passed along to you?
Yeah, he, basically he kind of ended the conversation with me. He says he doesn't view the decision to appoint, he said Don, calling him Don, or anyone with conservative credentials to the board as an existential for the renewable energy industry. And he thinks many in the industry, Republicans, Democrats, may take it that way, but he thinks the Utility Commission mandate is very clear. This is what he stressed: reliability and affordability. And second order concerns are greenhouse gases, carbon, something like that. But they're second order concerns. And we really do have to be, this is Treasurer Briner's words, focused on making sure that consumers, businesses, and the state's taxpayers are treated well, and they can deal with those other issues later. Basically, it's all coming down to treating the taxpayer well and trying to manage things as appropriately as possible. And he said the legislature is also doing that with their new authority under the law that was passed in December.
You can read some more of that exclusive interview by visiting our website this morning, carolinajournal.com. Teresa Opeka joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:49, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time for another look at traffic this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. And Hot.
It's 5:54. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. U.S. Chief District Judge Richard Myers has given parties involved in the North Carolina Supreme Court election dispute 2 extra days until tomorrow to submit additional legal arguments. Myers signaled plans to issue a final ruling without a trial by treating existing briefs as cross motions for a summary judgment. He emphasized that no material facts appeared to be in dispute at this time, but did ask all of the parties involved to confirm this and raise any objections to his approach or request time to present more evidence. This case involves Republican candidate Jefferson Griffin, the State Board of Elections, Democrat Allison Riggs, and several Democratic-aligned groups. Will not be getting a ruling, at least it seems very unlikely that we'll be getting a ruling in this case this week. We'll turn our attention to next week and keep an eye on it as we head deeper into the month of May. Turning our attention back to the General Assembly this morning, the North Carolina House passed the Criminal Illegal Alien Enforcement Act earlier this week, doubling down on requiring North Carolina law enforcement to cooperate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement to remove criminal illegal immigrants who have been charged with serious crimes from communities across the state. Though House Bill 10 was a similar measure passed at the end of 2024, legislators say that the new bill, House Bill 318, tightens the timeline on law enforcement, mandating that law enforcement alert ICE before an illegal alien criminal suspect is scheduled to be released, entering dangerous catch and release policies designated to provide a safe haven to criminal illegals in Democrat-run jurisdictions, like many of the controversies and concerns in Mecklenburg County. The bill passed in a vote of 70 to 45, with Representative Clara Cunningham, the Democrat from Mecklenburg County, being the sole Democrat to both sponsor the bill and vote for the legislation. In her county, surrounding the Charlotte metro areas, where Sheriff Gary McFadden has openly decided not to work with ICE to hold illegal aliens in custody until individuals from ICE arrive on scene. Representative Cunningham said, quote, "If we're talking about protecting our communities, we need to do what we're supposed to do. If it calls for us to be in compliance with what the feds want, then why not? All over the state. It's not just happening in Mecklenburg County. We've got issues with a 200% increase in overdose deaths in Mecklenburg County. We've had 4 individuals arrested inside of the courthouse in the last couple of weeks that were illegals. We want all of this to stop," end quote. Though most of North Carolina's 100 sheriffs do work with ICE, about 5, even with the passage of House Bill 10, have opted not to work with detainer requests from federal agencies, something that House Speaker Destin Hall described as pulling politics over safety. Hall said on the House floor, for whatever reason in 2018, 5, maybe 6 sheriffs decided they just weren't going to cooperate with ICE at all. Doing so, I would submit to you, is simply putting politics ahead of public safety. It's a no-brainer to make sure that we're dealing with folks again, not only who are here illegally, but those who have also been charged with serious crimes. It's an easy thing to do for a sheriff to cooperate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That legislation has now moved its way through the North Carolina House in a vote of 70 to 45. We'll continue to track the details right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Well, that's going to do it for a Thursday edition. You can, again, keep up to date with everything on our website, carolinajournal.com. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.